it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be recommending books to you guys, which I do all the time, but this time I specifically asked you guys what books you were looking for, so subscriber recommendations? I don't really know what I'm gonna call this video yet, but roll the intro. So I actually got this idea from Instagram. I saw a bunch of people doing this on their Instagram stories and I was like, this is a brilliant idea and I can't believe I've never done a video like this before. I don't know if anyone else ever has, but like, I love this idea. I'm so excited about this video. When I was compiling my list, I was like, this is so much fun. Like, I felt like I was working at the bookstore again, which one of my favorite things was I felt like I was constantly being tested every day with what my knowledge was for book recommendations. So I took to the Instagrams and on my story, I asked you guys to give me like different prompts, kind of basically what you're looking to read, specific things, general things, whatever. And I have a ton of recommendations for you guys. This is definitely going to be the first of a couple of videos, so I think I might do a part 1 and part 2 of it. Soon a part 2, because I know now is the time for book recommendations. So for each question or whatever answer, I guess, that I ended up picking, I have multiple responses. So I'm going to be kind of going through these really quickly because I think I ended up narrowing it down to like 50 responses. I got so many, and luckily some were repeats, so you might still get the answer that you're looking for here, but I honestly had so many, and there were so many that I wanted to do, but I was like, I'm gonna narrow it down a little bit, and as I'm filming, I might narrow it down further and then save the rest for a part 2. I don't really know, but let's just get to the recommendations. First up is a fantasy based on dragons, princesses, and kingdoms, so the whole royalty thing. Basically, a typical convention for fantasy, but dragons are not always in fantasy. And the one series that I thought of was The Queen of Blood by Sarah Beth Durst. So I don't recall if there are dragons in the first book. I know there's a lot of natural spirits. It's a very interesting world, but the second book has a dragon on the cover. So this like for sure has a dragon-like creature. It kind of looks like a fluffy dragon, which is like a dragon but leveled up, which if a dragon can get any better. This series is definitely worth the go, even if the first book doesn't have dragons. It's really good, has that royalty aspect, and you have a different queen in each one, which is super cool. A book that gives a good life lesson. The first recommendation I have is actually downstairs. Didn't go to get it, sorry about that, but that is A Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. I probably butchered that, but that is a book that I feel like you could read over and over again and you'll get a different lesson from it every time you read it, which is really cool. And then the other book is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This gives a lot of life lessons about society and how you don't have to have a proper education in order to get a good job. You just need to get the job that will keep you happy. Like, it kind of breaks down the education system a little bit and is about following your dreams rather than following what you think is the right path, because there is no one set right path. YA historical fiction with no magic or alternate history, and preferably not World War II. So first is Alex and Eliza by Melissa De La Cruz. This is a love story, so if you're not looking for a romantic one, this wouldn't be the one for you, but it is set during the Revolutionary War, and it's following, if you're familiar with the play Hamilton, then you know it's following Alexander Hamilton and Eliza Schuyler, and it is all about their love story and all the complications that come with that. Next is A Mad Wick and Folly by Sharon Biggs Waller. This is set during the suffragette movement, and it follows that whole storyline, which is definitely a timeline that I don't see very often in books, so that was a nice refresher. And finally is Black Dove, White Raven by Elizabeth Wein. She's one of my favorite authors, but this is a really cool story because it's actually set in Africa, but it follows pilots. That's kind of what she specializes in, so I definitely recommend that one as well. I'm sure there are some other historical fictions, but most of the ones that I've read and loved are World War II centered, but if I can think of any others, then I will add them. If you can think of any others for any of these recommendations, comment them down below. A book with an autistic main character. So unfortunately I could only really think of one for this one, so if you have any others, then please comment those additional recommendations down below. I would even love some more, but the one that I thought of is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is an own voices story, and the main character has autism spectrum disorder. It is a romance story, and it's an adult romance story, so be mindful of that. There are some sex scenes in it. There's quite a few, and they do get pretty intense, so if that's not what you're looking for. But both books in this companion novel series feature a main character who has autism spectrum disorder. Fantasy stories with multiple character perspectives. So I could go on and on for this one, but because of that, I decided to focus on stories that utilize perspective in an interesting way. So first is Fury Born by Claire Legrand. This, I like how it utilizes perspective because you follow two female characters who are centuries apart and you see how they affect each other, which was fascinating to me. So the one is a queen and she ends up being a legend for the second character who is a bounty hunter, and getting both of their perspectives led to a very nice, well-rounded story. Sci-fi revolving around technology similar to Ready Player One. First, I have Warcross by Marie Lu. This is probably the most similar to Ready Player One in the fact that it's video game-esque. You have this whole virtual reality world. It's super cool. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, brilliant. So it's like a future society where this game is integrated with their society. Definitely has similarities to Ready Player One in that way, but super colorful and fun story all around. The other two are quite different, but they do still have a pretty heavy technological side. So first is Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This of course features AI and spaceships and all of that stuff, but AI and computer technology is a main part of the story. And then Honor Among Thieves by Rachel Kane and Anne Aguirre. This has sentient spaceships, and that to me is pretty technological and a different twist on the typical technological sci-fi. At least for me, I'm not a huge reader of sci-fi, so that could be something you see quite often. World War II. I definitely have a giant stack here for you, and it was really hard to narrow down. So The Book Thief goes without saying. Fantastic. If you are going to read one World War II historical fiction, I highly recommend this one. I love it. It's like one of my favorite books of all time. You know that if you've been here for a while. Winter of the World by Ken Follett is also really cool. That one I would recommend reading as a series because it's the Century trilogy. I haven't actually finished it yet, but the first book is World War I, and then you follow the different generations of that family in the second book through World War II, and then the third book through the Cold War, which is fascinating to me, but that is an adult historical fiction. And actually, speaking of adult historical fiction, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, another one of my favorite books. It's set in Nazi-occupied France, and you follow two sisters through the war. The Girl in the Blue Coat by Monica Hesse is set in Amsterdam during World War II and follows a girl who is in search of a Jewish girl who has gone missing. So it's kind of a mystery story and also unveiling a lot of the atrocities that happened in Amsterdam during the war. Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman is one of the first books that I read when I discovered BookTube, and I still love this story. It's about a girl who is Hitler's niece, so she knows him very, very well, but she's starting to discover that he's not obviously a good person, and you follow her as she discovers that and forms a relationship with a Jewish reporter, and they learn more about how terrible he is and how he had a hand in killing her father. Wolf by Ryan Groudon. I read this recently, and it is an alternate history, so a little bit different, but it is what if the Axis had won World War II. So you're following that, and it's super good. Brutus Apetys is amazing. So we have Between Shades of Grey and Salt to the Sea. This follows one of the worst maritime disasters in history, but no one knows about it. I hadn't heard about it until I read this book. And then this one is about Lithuanian characters who are taken away to a camp in Siberia, and both are equally heartbreaking. All of these honestly are heartbreaking, but so powerful. And finally, Elizabeth Ween. She's a fabulous author. I couldn't find Rose Under Fire. It's like somewhere on my shelves, but like I mentioned, she deals with pilots mostly, but Codename Verity is the first one, and it is about a British pilot who ends up crashing in Nazi-occupied France, I believe, and she is taken in. It's her being questioned by the Gestapo. That is what forms the whole story. That is honestly just the tip of the iceberg for World War II historical fiction, but I could do like a whole video about that, and maybe I will soon. Actually, not anytime soon, because I don't want anything depressing, but like eventually. A cat has come to join me. She's really sad that I'm in her chair. She always sits here, but I'm presently using it. I'm so sorry. Also, the lights are so bright in your eyes, but it's fine. We're still happy to be here. You're so cute. YA without any romance, because yes, it is so hard to find books without love stories. So I kind of cheated a little bit. These are with little to no romance. I have done a video on this way back in the day, so I'll link that down below if you're interested in more. But first, Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This follows a boy who has started seeing this monster in his backyard since his mother started her cancer treatment. So it's a very sad story, but it does have pictures in it. There we go. Pictures. Your Welcome Universe by Whitney Gardner. This follows a deaf girl who has been kicked out of her deaf school. She has to go to a hearing school now, and it's all about her adjusting to that culture. And she also is a graffiti artist, and she's very passionate about that. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson pretty shockingly doesn't have a romance plot line. I was kind of expecting one, but there isn't one. This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. Once again, one that I feel like I would have expected there to be a romance plot line, but you don't get one, which is cool. Also, I never said this is a sci-fi. I didn't really say anything about it. This is a story where there are monsters in the world and there's music involved, and I haven't read it in so long and I need to reread it, I think. And two books that I previously mentioned, The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak has no romance, and Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein also has no romance. Winter Girls by Laurie Halse Anderson is another book I haven't read in forever, like even before BookTube is when I read this book. So it does have a lot of triggers, be wary of that. It's a very intense story, but no romance in that one. And Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock by Matthew Quick is another one that also has some triggers. It's about a boy who decided that he's going to kill his best friend this one day, and you follow him across that day when he's going to kill his best friend. Books themed around a big family, and also thank you, I appreciate that you like my videos. So I've got three here. On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. Not necessarily a huge family, but it is a very tight-knit family unit that I enjoy thoroughly. The family dynamic was one of my favorite things about this story. This is the author of The Hate U Give, and it's about Bree, who is trying to become a rapper in order to save her mother as she has lost her job, and she's trying to save their house from being evicted and all that stuff. That didn't make sense, but you get it. Entwined by Heather Dixon. This is a fantasy retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses fairy tale, but obviously with 12 Dancing Princesses, it follows a girl who has 11 siblings, which I would say is a pretty big family. The first book that came to mind though for big family was Save the Date by Morgan Matson. This is all about a huge family, and it's all about the family. That's actually the main topic of the story, because their family has been the stars of a comic strip for their entire lives. It's all about the adventures of them, and now they're finally coming together for the wedding of the oldest sister, I believe, and they haven't been together for a long time, so it's family chaos, wedding chaos, all that jazz. I just remembered 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elliston has a huge family in it, but it's the extended family, but they play a key role in the story. They get everything going. They're the main plot line. The main character has just broken up with her boyfriend unexpectedly over Christmas break, so her family, her aunts and uncles and everything are kind of competing, and they plan these dates for her. So they're ridiculous dates, but it's so much fun. A meaningful love story. For this, I thought of books that I felt like it had an impact outside of the romance aspect. So The Fault in Our Stars by John Green might seem like a really basic recommendation, but honestly, if you're looking for a meaningful love story, it's going to be a love story that has a little bit more for you, a little bit more going on, and I think it's very, very meaningful, so I think if that's what you're looking for, this will be a great book for you, and I do really love this book, honestly. And The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This is a super meaningful love story. It follows two characters who meet on this one day in New York City, but unfortunately, it is the day that the one character is set to be deported back to Jamaica. So it's a love story that is doomed from the start, but you're rooting for it the entire time, and it's truly beautiful and heartbreaking. A book dealing with anxiety, I decided to go with Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This isn't necessarily dealing with anxiety per se. I believe it's more of OCD, but I did find it personally really relatable for my own struggles with anxiety. And overall, I do think that it represents mental illness as a whole excellently. Is excellently a word? I don't know. I just made it one. A story that's set in a forest. This is one that I love, but I feel like there's so many I'm forgetting, but I did my best. So we have Warrior of the Wild by Trisha Levenseller. This is about a girl who has been exiled to a forest, and it's a survival story as well, so it's definitely set in a forest. I feel like what I'm thinking of is there's so many books where there are giant portions of it that are set in forests. Hunger Games it's pretty much set in a forest, and the last Harry Potter book is set in a forest, so like you get lots of forests and lots of other books, but this is like entirely set and centered around the forest. And there's also Ever the Hunted by Erin Summerall. This is about a main character who ends up going into the forest after her father, who was a bounty hunter, has been murdered, and she has nothing left. She has no land or anything, so she goes to the one place where she feels safe, which is the Everwoods. Quick books that will boost my Goodreads goal. The entire Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire will definitely help you do that. These books are tiny. The audiobooks are like 3 hours long, maybe 4 hours long at the most, and honestly that's kind of why I continue with the series. It has a lot of potential, and I feel like because they're so short it doesn't really like get there, but they definitely will help you to boost your Goodreads goal. I would also say pretty much any romance works for me. I have a list of quick books planned for a video, but I was kind of saving it for after everything blows over because I feel like now is kind of the time for long books, but if you would like that, then please do let me know. Greek myth-esque books. So I'm cheating for this one, and I'm going with a book that I haven't read yet, to be honest, but when I worked at the bookstore I would have to do that. Like I can't read every book, so a lot of recommendations I would give would be books that I hadn't read yet, but like I just had to include this one, okay? And I also feel like I am going to love it, but I digress. That is The Lovely War by Julie Berry. This is just perfect for this. It is a love story set during World War I and World War II, and it is narrated by Aphrodite, which is so cool. Is she the Greek goddess or the Roman goddess? I think she's the Greek goddess. I don't know mythology that well, so I can't remember, but like either way, she's narrating it to her husband. Mount Olympus, it's for sure Greek. Okay, I was right. I kind of started sweating for a moment there because mythology confuses the hell out of me. It doesn't say the husband's name in here. It does say on Goodreads, but like gods narrating a love story, World War I and World War II. Oh, I already love it. Something unique in any way. Wolf by Wolf by Ryan Groudon. I will just talk about this book until my ears are blue because I loved it so much. But the unique part of this is one, the alternate history aspect that I talked about, but two, it's a motorcycle race and whoever wins that race gets to meet Hitler, but there's also like skin shifting in this story. It's one of those books where I read the synopsis and I'm like, this is weird and shouldn't work, but it totally does. Same with My Lady Jane by the Lady Janies, aka Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. They also have My Plain Jane, and then there's a new one coming out this year. So excited. But these are super funny stories and definitely out of the box. A gay or lesbian romance without angst and homophobia or unnecessary drama. Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. One of the coolest aspects of this is that the main character is lesbian, but it's not like the topic of the story. It just is, which makes so much sense and is something I wish we would see more. The topic of the story more so is she is trying to make it as a set designer in Hollywood, which was fascinating. I like learned so much about that side of movies that I didn't know about before, and the romance was really enjoyable. A super funny but lighthearted romance, The Bromance Book Club by Lisa K. Adams. This one doesn't get too intense. There are some family moments, but the family moments are more sweet and heartwarming than anything. It gets a little bit steamy at times, but not too steamy, and it follows a baseball player, Gavin Scott, whose marriage is in major league trouble. I feel like I'm the only one who like watches my videos enough to know that I quote that so often, which tells me I talk about this book way too often, but I enjoyed it so much. So since his marriage is in trouble, he ends up joining this book club, which is kind of like Fight Club. Like they are a bunch of Nashville's elite men, and they read romance books and they call them guides, and they read them to learn how to treat their wives properly and learn what they really want, which is actually super sweet and ends up being very funny overall. So definitely cute, quick, quirky, and fun. A book where mental health is discussed properly. So Turtles All the Way Down, like I said, is a great example of that. It's a fantastic representation for mental health, but also The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. Obviously, those are two books that you kind of need to read when you're in the right mindset, specifically this one because the main character's mother has committed suicide, and that is dealt with heavily, and it's her grieving process, but it also is just such a great representation of mental health and one of my favorite ones that I've ever read. Books set in college that are not filled with sex. There's a void here, and I wish that there were more books that I could recommend for this, but Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell is honestly the only one I can really think of. It is a really great book though. So it follows Kath, who is in her first year of college, and she's just learning to navigate that, and there is a romance plot line, but it's YA, so there's no sex involved, or at least like not blatant sex. A book with a sarcastic, badass female main character. This is once again one where I feel like there are lots of options, but Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, the main character of this Spensa, is sassy and lots of fun, very resilient, and I think that's what makes her badass overall. She has like pretty much no fear, but she also thinks through her decisions. She's not reckless, but she's still badass. Also, the witty banter is with like a spaceship, so like, I live for it. Wealthy people doing crazy things. This made me laugh a lot because that's like so specific, but I love it. So The 1000th Floor by Katherine McGee. This features wealthy and unwealthy people, but definitely a lot of crazy things. It's like Gossip Girl, but sci-fi and set in this giant tower. So where you live in the tower determines your social status, which is really cool, and there's lots of drama, all that stuff. So I think this will satisfy your craving for wealthy people doing crazy things. Friend group with great banter. This is another one where I love it, and I feel like there's a lot of books that I've read with it, but I can only think of one, and I had to do it. I'm sorry, I apologize in advance, but it is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. If you're looking for banter and you haven't read this book, I would be remiss to not recommend it to you because the banter is out of this world, top notch, first class, my favorite thing. Leigh Bardugo does banter like no other, and just this friend group, the banter, and the friend group in general, I just can't, and I don't want to drop it, but just read it, please. Something wholesome that's also gonna make me cry. Fun fact, I was planning on doing a video about books that will make you cry soon, but I felt like it was like too intense and heavy for the time being. I'm trying to do more fun and upbeat videos, but if you would like to see it still, let me know. I will do it like eventually after this all passes, but my recommendation for this is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I think the relationship in this is so wholesome because the characters are so wholesome. They're just little sweetie pies that you just want to hug and love forever. As far as making you cry, I think there is a certain emotional intensity and attachment that you will get to the characters that might bring a tear or two to your eye. A compelling young adult mystery. So I'm not a huge mystery reader admittedly, but I do have a few here that I think are good picks. So The Diviners by Limba Bray is more of a ghost mystery story that goes across 4 books. The final book is finally out, and these are so chunky that they will occupy so much of your time right now if you have a lot of free time because of all the chaos. It's set in 1920s New York, and it's essentially a ghost spooky story, which you're just trying to piece it together the entire time, and you're like, what? All Your Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban just came out super recently, and it is a contemporary mystery story where all these different characters, sort of like a Breakfast Club crew, they are invited to a scholarship dinner only to arrive and discover that there is a bomb and a syringe filled with poison. So they either have to choose one of them to die or they all end up dying. Dun dun dun! Truly Devious by Moria Johnson is a super cool mystery that is set in a boarding school in the hills of Vermont, not hills, mountains, kind of same thing. Whatever, you get the point. This follows a girl who is obsessed with serial killers and true crime and all of that. She loves that stuff, and there is an age-old murder mystery that happened at this school that no one was ever able to solve. That's called a cold case. Clicked in my brain just as I was talking, but she has gone to the school set to try and solve it. So it's alternating between then, when the murder happened, and now, and spooky, ooky, all that stuff. What just happened to me? And finally, my top probably recommendation, so I should have started with it, but I didn't. That would have been smart. Whatever, is Sadie by Courtney Summers. The reason I didn't start with it is because you've probably read it if you're looking for mysteries. I recommend the audiobook for it if you're into it and able to listen to that. It's super cool because there's a podcast element. It's about this girl who is trying to find the murderer of her sister, and like, there's just so much stuff going on. Just go into it and see if you like it. A dark fantasy story. This is another one where there are a ton, but I decided to go with Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This is set in like a gritty fantasy version of Las Vegas. It's like the underworld sort of thing. It's super cool. A little bit more mature, but like, it's about a girl who goes from a finishing school, so she's all prim and proper, and then she goes to like a Las Vegas like fantasy world, and that's not, she's like a fish out of water there, but that dichotomy makes the story really interesting, and it is a very interesting world as well. Travel books. I have a whole video on this. We'll link that down below. Any of these, if I have a video on it, I will link it down below. If I don't have a video on it, there might be one coming soon because I've got lots of recommendations planned. But Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee is a historical fiction fantasy, like hint of fantasy travel story where they are traveling across Europe. I mostly like European travel books. I mean, I wrote one, so like it makes sense. Also, this has a great queer romance in it, so that is awesome. And I See London, I See France by Sarah Mlynowski is a great European travel novel, probably one of my favorites. If you're looking for a road trip travel novel, there are so many, but The Geography of Lost Things by Jessica Brody is one that I think is pretty underrated. It's about a girl whose estranged father has just died. He left her his car, which is his prized possession, but she wants to sell it because her family is in trouble, so she has to drive across California in order to sell it, but in order to do that, because she doesn't drive stick, she has to go with her ex, so yikes. And also Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson is kind of a similar concept admittedly, but it's this whole cross-country trip where the main character's father has just died, and he died in a car accident, so she's not comfortable driving, so they enlist the help of a family friend who is going to help them, and they end up going on this detour. I don't know why I said them, her struggles. A book that will make me laugh out loud, My Lady Jane. Honestly, this is the only book that I can think of that has made me like laugh out loud. I feel like there's not that many books with the purpose of humor in YA, but this one is definitely meant to be funny. It follows Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, so she is set to be beheaded, and it's just like in the beginning they're like, this is history, like kind of, we're pretty much going with it, and then they literally say, okay, now history's out the window and we're not going with it anymore, and there's a man who turns into a horse, so like that happens. A Forbidden Love, A Million Junes by Emily Henry is perfect for this one. It is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet sort of situation in the fact that these families have been feuding for so long, and the main character doesn't even know why they're feuding, so she ends up connecting with the boy from the opposing family who is around her age, and they end up uncovering why their families are rivals over the course of the story, and of course there is a little bit of romance in there. Easier classics besides Alice in Wonderland, which is definitely a pretty easy classic, although some people can't really mesh with the nonsense, so I don't know if it's the easiest classic. But I recommend children's classics for easier classics because, I mean, they're made for children, so they are at least a little bit simpler in terms of the language used. Anne of Green Gables is a great one. As a Canadian, I love that story a lot, and it's kind of similar to Alice in the fact that it promotes an overactive imagination. Heidi by Johannes Spiri is another great one that's set in the mountains of Switzerland, so it's also a beautiful setting. Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, super easy. A Secret Garden or A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Any of those children's classics I would say are solid to go with. So that's the last recommendation I'm going to give for this video. I hope it helped you guys out, and if I didn't get to yours, don't worry, I still have a bunch screenshotted that I will do for a video very soon because this was a lot of fun. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you're all doing well, staying safe and healthy, and I will see you guys in my next video very soon. Bye!